A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. The memories that are lost that you cannot replace. An aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the hurricane storm surge or the king tides. Look us up online at aquadam.net or give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119. We can help.
Consider advertising on the Opperman Report. We have excellent advertising rates for you. The advertising rates are very affordable. Once your ad goes up and we play the show on the podcast and on the YouTube channel, those ads stay up there forever. And then we play repeats every single night of classic Opperman Report shows. And your new ads will be inserted into those repeats that play every single night. So the saturation is incredible, and the rates are very affordable. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com, or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Contact KMD Law. Emailrevealer.com. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762. Hey guys, if you like the show and you want to show your support, check out the Opperman Report Patreon. We have all the shows that you hear Monday through Friday on AM/FM radio, but we cut out the ads, so you can hear that content ad-free. The Opperman Report Patreon, you should stop there once a day and check out what's going on over there. That's Opperman Report Patreon.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. Who am I? Guess who I am? I'm not going to tell you who I am. It's a secret. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. It's OPPERMAN Investigations with a little S at the end at gmail.com. I like the show. Check out our Patreon. I could really use some new Patreon support right now if you have to have been listening for a long time. If you've been following the news this week, the headline news is basically an Opperman Report repeat from 2017, 2016. Nothing new came out. In fact, I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff that came out, and I got even more information that came out this week. Unbelievable. But I can really use support at the Patreon right now. I'm so sick. And I'm so, I could barely, I didn't record anything this past week. And even today, I could just barely get to the microphone. I'm doing the best I can. So I can really use some support, guys, if you're out there. Let's see. What do I say? I tell them who I am. I tell them about Patreon. And then I say go to Spreaker.com. 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 It's like speaker, but with an R in there. Spreaker. I didn't name the company. Okay. And if you listen at Spreaker.com, and if you share a link, you share the Spreaker link, I get paid 10% more. So that's a big help for me. It's a big assistance to the show. If you share, you retweet for me, all that kind of stuff, it's a big help. Especially now, because we're going to be about to take a huge dip from the Christmas income. The holiday season income. And I see a huge dip. In fact, I may not. February could be our last month. February or March could be our last month in the year for the rest of my life. Spreaker.com. I do a live show every Friday night. Tonight is January 5th, 2024. What happened when I was a kid? Remember 2001, Space Odyssey, right? 2001. We were supposed to have all this stuff, video phones and moving sidewalks and the shuttles to the moon and Mars and all this kind of place like that. The Jetsons. We were supposed to have flying cars and moving sidewalks. All those movies where the people are walking around and they got those jumpsuits, like all in the same color. We're going to be wearing this like one unitard outfit, What happened to all that? We got nothing. The best they could do for us, they give us those scooters. No moving sidewalks, but they got to get you a scooter. You can buy the scooter with your debit card there, and then, how do I get home? How do I return the scooter after I've been riding the scooter? Don't worry, just leave it out in front of your house. All right, someone else will come along up and need the scooter. Okay. Well, that's great. That's the solution to things in 2024. Maybe by 2025, they'll have those flying cars or something like that. Or the submarines. We're going to be talking about submarines because, there's submarines going to Epstein Island. Did you know that? Oh, God. We're going to be talking about that too. What? Okay. So go to Spreaker.com, live show every Friday night, play repeats there. If you sign up for free at Spreaker, you get an email notification whenever we put up new content. And there's an app for your phone. You can put the Spreaker app for your phone. You can listen on your phone. What fun. What fun games and surprises we have for you. Happy New Year, folks. Happy New Year. Opperman Report audience. My holiday sucked. First holiday of my life. 23 years I didn't spend with my daughter Vic. Just a misery. Oh, no, my God, too. The crazy emails and phone calls we got this week, man. It really topped it, man. It seems like, man, when you look around, everybody is just losing touch with reality, man. You look at these Twitter accounts. My Twitter feed is just all batshit crazy stuff, man. People with 100,000 followers coming up with these. I actually did a thing this week because of all the groundbreaking list that came out. The Epstein list. We're going to be getting into that. And I told you there was no list. No one listens to me. I came out, I said, this is an unsealed photograph from Epstein Island. And I took a picture of Elon Musk's SpaceX missile. And I said, look at this. This is an unsealed photo. Just came out this week. Jeffrey Epstein had a missile that he was trafficking children to Mars. Sex trafficking children to Mars. And people thought that was real. I really thought that was a secret photo from the island. And that there was a missile launcher on the island. An island that doesn't even have a road, no cars on that island. They had golf courts on that island. But there's secret bases, there's submarine bases and missiles. Who cares, right? Who cares? It's the only thing that sells these days is bull. And if you make it up, that's what people want. I could be making a fortune, man. If I was doing a right-wing MAGA show, man, and all the suckers were gullible suckers out there picking their pockets, I should have done. I should disguise my voice, make up a fake name like half of these guys got. Look at me, I'm ranting and raving already. 8 minutes into the show. I haven't even gotten to my notes. My goodness. Ed, take it easy. Calm down, Ed. Ed, you should smoke marijuana. That'll help you calm down. Who told me that? Ted Rubenstein told me that. He says, Ed, maybe, you lose your temper less if you smoke some pot. Okay, maybe I'll do that for you, Ted. Keep Ted in your prayers, too, man. He's a good man. Out there doing good things. Good lifting, the heavy lifting, as you like to call it. Out there. Help me out again. Some behind the scenes info on some big project I'm working on. Big interview coming up. Historic. Keep an eye out for that. Coming up after this, a lot of people like to say, Ed, I don't agree with your politics, but I love your show. Your politics, I don't agree with them, Ed, but I love your show. They don't say it in that voice. They say it in their regular voice. Only I say it in that voice. Okay? But that's what they love to say. Ed, I don't agree with your politics. Usually when people say that, they have no clue what my politics are. They don't understand my politics. Okay? Because if they did, I can't see how they would disagree. So I'm doing a show tonight with Professor Charles Derber, Dying for Capitalism, How Big Money Fuels Extinction and What We Can Do About It. Okay? And brilliant guy, man. Professor Charles Derber is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant man. Okay? And if you don't understand when I tell you I'm a socialist, you don't understand what socialism is. And some people out there have the gall to tell me, well, Ed, maybe you should Google the definition of socialism and then you'll understand. Okay, well, here I'm talking to a guy, college professor, written like 40 books, friends with Noam Chomsky. And he seems to think that I know what I'm talking about. He seems to think, and he was so enjoyed his conversation with me that he offered to get Noam Chomsky to come on the Opperman Report. So it seems that the people who know what they're talking about think I know what I'm talking about too. Okay? So maybe when you say you don't agree with my politics, you can listen to one of these shows. Because what happens is all these guys out there who say, well, I don't agree with that politics. They see this. They see the word capitalism in a title. Well, it's like kryptonite. They can't listen. Socialism, they're going to be eating zebras like Venezuela. You can't have a garden if you're a socialist. You don't have to have a garden. Did you know that? I did a whole show about that. No gardens for socialists. This crazy guy I met was telling me that, Ed, my friend was in Western Czechoslovakia and Eastern Europe and wouldn't let him have a garden. Oh, God. But this is a guy who doesn't have not allowed to have a garden here. Listen to an HOA. He's not allowed to have a garden either. Professor Charles Derber, Dying for Capitalism. It's a great book. Beautiful cover on the book, too. It's interesting, too. We get into a whole thing about the Dali Museum. I went to the Dali Museum for a lecture there about AI, the use of artificial intelligence in creating art. And I believe that's what this guy used, Dali surrealist imagery, using artificial intelligence. We talk about this. So check it out, Professor Charles Derber. And, maybe, who knows? Would you like me to have Noam Chomsky on the show, before I die? I'd like to have that, right? My last year here on the show. Oh, the last few months, whatever I got left. Pizzagate, Stormy Daniels. Okay, all right. And what else is this? To Everett Stern comes back. I think it's his third time back. He's got a brand new lawsuit with Michael Flynn. The main topic is, we talk about some other things too, but the main topic is the FBI, New York FBI field agent in charge, McConnell. I'm sure I'm butchering his name. Who was Everett Stern's point of contact when he was filtering him information about Russian interference. This is the guy who said, hey, there's no Russian interference. He could not find any kind of Russian collusion with Mr. Trump. And then it turns out that McConnell was being paid by Deripaska, Oleg Deripaska, a Russian oligarch who also does business with Trump and did business with Trump. So all these right-wingers out there like Sean Hannity who say, the only one involved in Russian collusion was the FBI agent investigating Russian collusion. Trump was cleared, and the FBI agent was not. Okay, well, and that's brilliant to write. I told you. I once put out a press release that saying shortly after my consultation with the FBI, they located this person. I was trying to locate myself. Okay, it's all how you pepper it there, So that sounds great, but how it really sounds is, hey, the guy was getting paid off by the guy that Trump was colluding with, and then comes out a report saying there's no collusion. Because isn't that what just happened? Okay, Everett Stern, that's coming up. Okay, the title of tonight's show. The title of tonight's show is something along the lines of, it's like a repeat. The news of the week of Copperfield, Epstein, Derchowitz is like a repeat. Now, where do I start with all this? Let's start with Copperfield. Came out this week that Mr. Copperfield. Okay, let's start with this. This BS. that came out this week. Now, there were some flight logs that came out, some new flight log information. I haven't checked that out yet. I've been basically focusing on the Miami Herald lawsuit. There was a defamation lawsuit between Virginia Giuffre and Ghislaine Maxwell that was settled. Depositions, emails, exhibits, motions were sealed in that case to protect people's names. The Miami Herald sued to have those names unsealed. Now, this somehow got translated into the world waiting for a list. So, somehow this civil case, this civil defamation case, had a list of child sex traffickers in it, somehow. Because there were 150 sealed names. Well, that must be sealed names of a list. People that were sex trafficking. Okay, well, there's no indication of that. Now, remember, this is a civil defamation case. It's not a criminal case with a list of client list or any kind of information like that whatsoever. Where that comes from, who dreamed that up, and why people are still calling it a list after it's been proven it's not a list, it just goes to show you how detached from reality we've become, especially on this topic here. Okay? It's just crazy. All right? Now, one of the names that did come out in this thing was David Copperfield. A brief mention of his name. He was at a party down at Epstein's Island down in the Little St. James. And he was talking to one of these women. And he said something about, some of these women are getting paid to bring other women. Now, that's the big scandal around David Copperfield. If you look, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I played a repeat I did of David Copperfield, a story I gave you about David Copperfield that I did back around 2017. Because there's some interesting stuff about David Copperfield. David Copperfield owns his own island, too. Is there something wrong with my mic? Anybody in the chat room can tell me if there's a problem with the mic right now? Because it sounds funny to me. Audio? Just put a little note in there if you could for me, please. David Copperfield had his own island. Now, there was a criminal investigation into David Copperfield because now what he was doing, how he was recruiting these women, he had a particular fetish. He would like to, wait. Okay, you can hear me good. Now, David Copperfield had his own particular fetish where he would vet these women out who came to his magician performances in Las Vegas. And he had people who would go out into the audience, and he liked to pluck women who were there with their husbands or boyfriends and say, hey, would you like to be part of the act? And they'd say, yeah, I would. Okay, well, fill out this questionnaire with your hobbies, your interests, and stuff like that, and your name, your address, and your phone number, and all that kind of stuff, so we can get back to you afterwards and send you a video of the performance and all that stuff like that. And then Copperfield would contact them and invite them to private parties where there were modeling scouts on his private island. He takes one of these women, she gets down there, and it's the whole deal where, you're flying to St. Thomas, and then you got to take a boat, ferry a little shuttle to another island, and all this kind of stuff. And then they take her passport away from her, and this woman winds up at one point, he's drowning her in the ocean. Okay? That's the allegation she's making against him. I go into this in much greater detail because we're running out of time already. I'm 18 minutes in. I go into much greater detail on the repeats. I encourage you to look for that. I just put it up this week. You can find it on Spreaker. Okay? Now, her case got dropped because she met a guy at a casino. She went up to a room with him, and he raped her too during this time period. And she came down screaming to the lobby, help, 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 I was just raped. Right? And when she gets to the ambulance, she says to the ambulance drivers, I can't believe this just happened to me again. I was just raped by David Copperfield. Okay? And so the conclusion is, well, she's just a hustler, hustling people. And what this guy says to the cops was, well, we came up here, we started fooling around, and then she started demanding money from me, and then she ran out here crying rape. But clearly, that is a hustle people do. Usually they got their boyfriend nearby to usually exert a little muscle there to collect that money, which is the normal way it's done. And if it falls flat, you don't go running out into the hallway screaming rape, especially if a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against David Copperfield in the wings. Now, that was talked about publicly. That's in the papers. You can find that. You can Google that. You can search that. You can read all about it. You can listen to me report about it years ago. Okay? seeing as how Copperfield's in the news. But now what you probably won't hear about, because I don't think the public knows this about, but there was another allegation of David Copperfield, a young teen pageant winner who claimed that she was underage when she was a sexual battery with David Copperfield. Now, that was a legit case that I knew about and I got wind about. I wasn't personally directly involved in it, but I knew the facts of it because I knew the people involved. And the only reason it did not proceed is because of the statute of limitations. Okay, that the clock had run out to file that lawsuit, and that's the only reason that didn't go forward. But I encourage you to go back and check out my old stuff about David Copperfield. Alan Derchowitz came up this week. Alan Derchowitz. And there's actually a guy out there, I think it's on the TrueAnon Reddit page, who says, I heard Ed Opperman give a full-throated endorsement of Alan Derchowitz. I don't know what the hell you're hearing, man. Okay, I don't know what the voices in your head are telling you, or if they tell you to harm yourself or harm others, but you didn't hear that coming out of my mouth. I got beef with Derchowitz going back to the 80s, all right, back in New York. I'm going to give an endorsement that I'm somehow inclined to have some kind of affinity with Alan Derchowitz. Okay, before all this stuff. Okay. And he's a good lawyer. Okay, he's a Harvard professor. You got to give him credit for that. But he's a brutal guy. And the reason why you don't hear people talking about him, you're not going to hear. Well, and I'm going to tell you something about this guy right now. You're not going to hear anywhere else. Okay, you only hear it from me. I posted up an image up on my Instagram, and it's up on my Twitter, of some litigation with Mr. Derchowitz and a couple of attorneys, okay, who were suing Derchowitz. All right? Boy, I tell you, I'm such an angry person. I've become such an angry person. I can't even help myself anymore. What happened was this. Brad Edwards, and I think it's Peter Casale, had filed a lawsuit against Derchowitz in support of a young plaintiff who claimed that Derchowitz had raped him. A Jane Doe case. And Derchowitz went back and sued them. No. Derchowitz went after the attorneys in public and said that they were sloppy attorneys. They made they didn't bother to investigate this case before they filed the case, and that their client was lying through her teeth. Okay? Edwards and Casale sued Derchowitz, okay? And all Derchowitz has to do now is prove they're lying through their teeth, right? That's it. And the case is solved. Now, that case was settled. That case was filed around 2015 and was settled in 2016. I wish I had those dates in front of me. I posted them on my Facebook, on Instagram. It's all there. But my notes tonight are just like handwritten notes. They're not very... because it's all stuff I lived through. The case was filed in 2015. Brad Edwards and Paul Casale, sued Derchowitz, accusing Derchowitz of defaming them because he claimed that their client was lying through her teeth and they didn't bother to investigate the case. Okay, very simple case. Now, there's another lawsuit that comes out later on. Well, by the way, too, when this case was settled in 2016 and they issued the press releases on a Friday night, William Ramsey sent me, he goes, oh, look at this, a Friday night document dump. They're settling that lawsuit. I says, oh, let me take a look at this. And I read the press release, the statements from Derchowitz and the statements from Casale and Brad Edwards. And my reading of this right away, I said, oh, Derchowitz paid to settle. And everyone says, no, it looks like they all settled it and there's no money changing hands. In fact, it looked like Derchowitz is gloating there, saying that he won. I said, oh, no. Derchowitz settled this. You'll watch. You'll see. And I went on air and I talked about it. And even the great Pierce Redmond said, oh, I don't quite agree with Ed Opperman about this. Ed Opperman, I think he's got this one wrong. Well, I'm not too big to ever say I told you so, okay? I'm the smallest man there is. I'll tell everybody I told you so. And I said back then, I said, no. Go back and find the tapes, man. They exist. It's not Watergate here, man. This isn't the Nixon White House. I'll give you the tapes. Okay, they're out there, man. For free at Spreaker.com. And just look up the dates, man. It's all there. Friday night, 2016, when the case was settled. Another lawsuit comes along in April 2019. Quote, Derchowitz continues to this day to insist that the terms of his settlement with Edwards and Cassell remain confidential, a position that can only be explained by Dershowitz's knowledge that revealing how much he paid to avoid a trial of the allegations against him would reveal his guilt. Dershowitz was accused of a crime of sexual battery against a minor. He was sued for it, and he paid to settle. Paragraph 84. As described above, Dershowitz has also repeatedly asserted that he wanted to have a trial to establish his innocence. By contrast, he paid to settle the case that would have provided that trial. He even lied about his being willing to waive the statute of limitations so that Roberts could sue him for sex abuse, a lie almost immediately exposed when he was promptly asked to do so and equally promptly refused. So now I've been telling you about this since 2007. 2019 when I first read this. When silly old Ed Opperman, pulled up this lawsuit and read the whole damn thing to talk to you about on the air. Okay, in 2000, I had a lot of energy back in 2019. I got a lot of things done by that. Back at that time, I had a lot of irons in the fire back in those days. Man, I was kicking ass all over the place. 2019, I think I peaked. 2019, I can barely peek over the covers of my bed. Okay. I was going to go back and explain my whole history with the Epstein case and all this kind of stuff like that. If I have time at the end of this, I will, because there's still a lot of people who have no idea my involvement back with all this. Let's take a look at the time. Maybe I can fit that in. I think I can. It was around 2009, 2010. I was in a waiting room in Florida. Okay, I'm going to go back. I had a client. He contacts me. He says, hey, Ed, man, my ex-wife is stalking me. She's going on my website and she's sending me these nasty messages. She's on probation for stalking me. She was arrested and convicted of stalking me. She's supposed to have no contact with me, and she's contacting me through my website. Okay, so I put up a little spider trap. They call it a spider. I forget what a spider thing they call it on the website to capture information of all the visitors that go there. You capture information about their computer or whatever device they're visiting the website with. Then I contacted her and I captured, because she's a suspect. I better not go into too much detail how this is done. Okay, but I was able to obtain information about her devices and compare to the information of the visitors to the website, and create a report that was then used to have a violation of parole hearing of this woman. Now, believe it or not, she went after me. You got to see the mugshots of this lady too. By the way, man, she's insane. And not only did she come after me, reporting me all over the place and doing all kind of crazy stuff against me, making complaints online, all this kind of stuff, but they let her leave Florida and visit Las Vegas. Okay, her probation officer let her leave Florida and visit Las Vegas in the middle of all this stuff. She was contacting me pretending she was working for the prosecutor's office. I get on the phone. We're going to have a pretrial conference between her defense attorney and the young ADA. It was a young defense attorney and a young ADA. We got on the phone together. He's going to make mincemeat out of me. I actually listened to them. They were very friendly, these two. They knew each other for a good many years down there in Florida. And we're getting on a conference call, and I could hear them talking to each other before I come on the line. And they're chummy chitty back and forth. He's laughing about how he's about to make mincemeat out of me. Okay, so I thought, this is great. So, and we get all on the line together, and he starts questioning me. And he's telling her, this guy's going to fall apart on the stand when I get him on the witness stand, so you're going to want to reduce these charges right now. But when I'm talking to him, right away, I go, look, man, and look, this isn't the way you want to defend this case. And Madam Prosecutor there, whatever her name was, and this isn't the way you want to prosecute this case. Let's pretend Ed Opperman died, okay? And I can't come down and testify. All you got to do is subpoena the phone records, okay? You send a subpoena to custodian records at the phone company, and you'll capture the information of her visiting this website. It's all there in her internet usage, okay? Okay, well, then let's do that, and we'll return and we'll reconvene this conference call a month now when the search warrant comes back. When the search warrant comes back, she sends it to me. Now I'm working for free. Okay, now my client, his retainer's run out. He won't send me any more money. Now I'm working for free over here. I love how everything, I'm trying to tell you about Jeffrey Epstein. I got involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and it turns into a story about me complaining about not getting paid. Okay? Every story ends that way for me. I get the return from the search, from the subpoena, and it's the wrong information. But on there is star 57. Is that what it is? Star 57 when you block caller ID block of her making phone calls to him. And I said, well, they don't need me now. They don't need my report. They don't need me to come down and testify. Because look, she violated the restraining order by making these phone calls. I sent an email back. Now this woman's on a tear. She's about to destroy my life. She's contacting me pretending she's working for the DA's office. So now that's another violation of her parole. She's stalking a witness. She's harassing a witness in the case against her. So I had to go down to Florida to testify against this woman. This is back around 2010 before they had these. Now they have Zoom. You can just testify via Zoom. Or even before that, they had Skype, but back then they didn't have that. And I had to fly down there. And when I was down there, I was in a waiting room. I think I was in a waiting room at the probation office. And I got a local magazine, and it had the story of this billionaire who was convicted and was having 3 little teenage girls come over to his mansion, and he got this incredibly ridiculous sentence of less than a year. And I says, what the hell? This is the craziest story I've ever heard. No one at that time knew the name Jeffrey Epstein, not in America. They talked about it a little bit over in Europe because of his connection to Prince Andrew, but in England, the tabloids over there were talking about him, but really not here in America. Not in no one in Vegas was talking about this guy. Wasn't in the national media here whatsoever. But I had read that local little article about him, and I always said, when I got the radio show in 2013, I says, you know what, man, I want to do a story about that billionaire, who had those little girls coming over for the massages. So I Googled some search terms, and I found the story. And then I says, well, okay, I'm looking for a guest now. Who can I bring on that knows the story? No one knew this story. There was nothing on YouTube. No one had talked about this. There was nothing we could find a guest that could talk about this case. I got Robert Morrow to come on because he knew some stuff about it. And that was the first radio show about Jeffrey Epstein. Back in those days, 2013, 2014, when you Google the name Ed Opperman, and it's still today, you can find it too. When you Google the name Ed Opperman and you go to images, you'll see a picture of Jeffrey Epstein comes up. Okay, that's how closely I was associated to the Jeffrey Epstein name and the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. 2015, since there was no one else talking about this with any kind of credibility or any kind of credentials whatsoever, the only other stuff was some crazy YouTubers who basically had heard my story and was listening to me every weekend and repeating what I was saying. The attorney Tom Mayer for Katie Johnson, first it was Jane Doe, and then later on they used the name Katie Johnson, who had filed a do-it-yourself lawsuit with a guy who at one time worked with the Jerry Springer show. Okay, I never had any contact with this guy whatsoever, okay? I only heard about that. But they had filed a lawsuit against Trump and Epstein that she was raped by Trump at 13 years old. Tom Mayer contacts me. He hires me to work on the case because now he had taken over this litigation. He's a legit lawyer. This guy's a legit, very well-respected lawyer. But he didn't have any of experience in sexual battery cases. But I knew people who did. So one of my little tasks in this thing that I helped out with, I'm really, I'm allowed to talk about my involvement in the case, but not divulge every little detail that I did. But one of the things I did was I was shopping around to other attorneys who might be interested in coming on board with this case. And during that process, one of the attorneys told me, well, is this that story, Ed, about the porn stars and the Trump flying on, then there's pictures of Trump flying on Epstein's plane, and there's pictures of Epstein flying on Trump's plane, and they're trying to sell those pictures. Is this what that's about? And I go, no, I don't know anything about that. And then another attorney tells me, this is about those porn stars sleeping with Trump. He was talking about Stormy Daniels and then Karen McDougal. Okay. Later, it turned out to be the Stormy Daniels case. So, but I know for a fact, man, that there are pictures of Trump on Epstein's plane and Epstein on Trump's plane. I know for a fact, and Clinton too, on both their planes, on Epstein's plane too. I know for a fact they exist. Okay, you're not going to hear that anywhere else. I know it from behind the scenes. So that was my involvement. I got involved in the Katie Doe lawsuit. I call it Katie Doe because it's a combination of Katie Johnson and Jane Doe. No one else calls it Katie Doe but me and some of the people on the case. Now, a lot of people, too, will say, well, Ed, we investigated that. We looked into that. I Googled many, many things about that litigation, and here's what I've concluded. Okay. Well, they used an address that did not exist, Ed, and the phone number was disconnected. And all that's true. But I know the address. I know the phone number. I know social security numbers. I know credit reports. I know all the real information in that case, and there's no question about the reality of the people involved. They exist. Everyone knows who they are. Okay, the problem with it was the defendant, the plaintiff in that case, the young girl, was threatened, and that's why she dropped the charges. Okay, I can get into much more detail on that. I kind of do have time. Let's see what else we're talking about here. Forget the Island and Royal Palms. Jerry left. Oops. Okay, we have time. Now, the case was ultimately dropped. Some attorneys came and went. Cheney Mason was involved for a while. A really, really good attorney from New Jersey who had that kind of practice of sexual battery, he was involved. I did a case with him later on. I forget his name right now. It's in my emails. But on election week, Lisa Bloom had taken over the case. There was going to be a press conference. There was a what is that called? A denial of service attack. It's DDoS. It's a denial of service, dedicated denial of service attack on the live stream server that was going to be broadcasting the press conference. And there was a dedicated denial of service attack on Lisa Bloom's computer network there. And that really shook up a lot of people because it was described to me that this was a state level traffic was being directed, that this was a state level attack. And then later on, when you hear these stories about how in the Steele dossier, about how Trump had access to these Russian porn, and that coup guy, the guy that ran the Russian coup, he ran the Internet Research Group, and he brags about running it. And they had all these, and they could redirect porn traffic and shut down websites just like they did in this case here. And then what happened was, after the election, I'm just happened to be driving in my car, and I hear Sean Hannity go, "We dodged a bullet this week." And the guest goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Epstein." Okay, so acknowledging that had that press conference taken place and had that litigation proceeded, it would have dragged down Trump. Now, also later on, too, Steve Bannon, when he was supporting that guy Moore, who was also a child molester, a former DA that was a child molester, who was supporting for some local race, and he said publicly, he says, "Well, what about," Ivanka was saying, well, she can't support Roy Moore, and Steve Bannon says, "Well, what about your father and that 13-year-old? Now, Steve Bannon was very close friends with Epstein. He was very close friends with Trump. He would know, and he agrees with me the case is legit. By the way, there were 3 independent witnesses in that case, too, ready to come forward and testify. Now, other cases had come to me, too, over the years that I tried to vet out, where we could not come up with independent witnesses. If you have a situation like that, hey, I was sexually abused when I was 13 years old. I'm 30 now, okay? Well, who did you talk to at the time? Do you have a diary? Did you have to go see a doctor? Did you talk to a school nurse, a teacher? Did you tell anybody about this? And usually they do, and you have a case, you can proceed, but sometimes there's nothing there to back it up. Other times, you kind of find out, the client is kind of fudging things here. There's one woman contacted me who basically her whole story is on YouTube. Her whole claims against Epstein are just YouTube claims. And when she first talked to me privately, her story now has changed exponentially. And also to others, too, that she's basically been dismissed by any kind of legit attorney, would not take the case. By the way, no law firm I talked to turned down the Katie Johnson case. Nobody said, hey, there's nothing there. They all were going to go with that case. But these other cases, just because, listen, if I can't vet out a plaintiff, okay, I still send it to the attorney and I says, hey, look, it's thin. There's weaknesses here. There's spots here, okay? it's thin, but it's my motivation. I want this case to go. Because the very minimum I'm going to get paid to investigate the case. So I'm pushing, and if this lawyer doesn't take it, they can go take my report, I'll give them the report. I sent it to the attorney. Send it to any attorney I want, man. See if you can find another investigator to interview you and do this, right? So a lot of people say, well, Ed, all his cases fail. That's not true. That's not true at all. Okay, and all my cases fail. Trust me on that. Okay, just can't talk about every case. And some cases were thin. Now, there's a lot of talk. What else did I? Later on, it kind of came out. You can kind of hear it, even on one of the shows. I'm interviewing Hoffenberg. And it came out on the air that I was briefly hired in the Virgin Islands by the Attorney General's office in the Virgin Islands. I don't talk about that a lot. I've mentioned it a few times. My relationship with the Virgin Islands, those people down there, is fine. It's great. And, a lot of times when you're talking on the radio and you have personal relationships with people, you don't want to damage that relationship, and you can't talk about it. But I had some involvement. I know what's going on in the Virgin Islands, okay? And by the way, too, man, people really got to give a salute to Stephen Hoffenberg, who initiated all that stuff in the Virgin Islands, man. That was all his idea. That was his pushing. That was his motivation. People have really no idea. People just, and these characters, you see these Twitter accounts with 300,000 followers getting interviewed. Like, my opinion on the release this week of the list. They have no idea what they're talking about. And I think that's by design. They want you looking at some stupid island. Like I made up this story about the as a joke, this missile launcher on the island. You might be hearing a story out there right now about Water Island, that the Biden family owns Water Island down there in the Virgin Islands. And it's only 8 miles away from Epstein Island. And as a matter of fact, there's a submarine base on Water Island. Okay. And that there was, and Ghislaine Maxwell, as you know, was a submarine pilot. She really was a submarine pilot. So they're going back and forth by submarine because there's a submarine base on Epstein Island. Okay. Little St. James is a tiny little island with golf carts. There's no roads on there. There's a helipad on there. There's a mansion on there with like 5 bedrooms. There's 3 guest houses. It's surrounded by rocks. The water around that island is 8 feet deep. You can walk. Okay, it's only a mile between Little St. James and Great St. James. And you can't get a Disney cruise ship through that water. Okay, and you can't get any kind of submarine that needs 80, 90 feet of water, to get through. A submarine that's going to, maybe a one-man submarine. Why would you need a one-man submarine? You can take a rowboat. It's 8 miles, But the thing is, as far as Water Island goes, Water Island is not a little private island that the Bidens own. It's not a little private island like Great St. James or Little St. James. Water Island is like the top 5 or 6 islands in the Virgin Islands. It's a big island. It's not big enough for an airstrip. There's a ferry that goes back and forth to it. There's cars, there's restaurants, there's cars, there's hotels, there's beaches, there's rental. You rent golf carts, you rent scuba gear, all kind of stuff. It's a big island, and one of the Biden family's, Biden's brother, owns a house there. He doesn't own the island. It's not a private island. If you wanted to do any kind of sex trafficking from there to Epstein Island, you could just take a motorboat. Okay, you wouldn't need a submarine. Oh, God. But a lot of people own houses down there. Trump owns an island. I think it's in St. Martin. Not an island. He owns a $14 million property on them. I don't know. Forget the island, okay? Somehow it came out that these names associated with a defamation lawsuit were visitors to the island. If you look at and by the way, in this litigation, Guthrie versus Maxwell, there's a flight chart on there that show the flight trips, okay, that Guthrie took. And only about 25-30% of those trips were to the island. They're to New York, they're to Florida, they're to New Mexico, they're to Europe. Only 30% are to the island, okay? Jeffrey Epstein lived in West Palm Beach, 1 mile from Mar-a-Lago. the majority of the girls he was raping were little girls that went to Royal Palms High School 25 minutes away. And many of them lived over at the trailer park off of Belvedere Avenue, Boulevard, whatever it is. I've been all around that neighborhood. Now, so he was picking up these little girls and taking them back to his house. He wasn't picking up girls at his high school. Many of them were coming over by cab and stuff anyway, too. And he's not taking them to the airport and taking them down to the island to rape them down there. He's raping them in his house where he got a massage table. Okay? So all this crazy stuff about the island is a huge distraction. The majority of the crimes are taking place in New York and West Palm Beach. Okay? That's the majority of the crimes. Forget the island. Okay, and the submarines. And Oprah landing her private jet on the island that has no landing strip to land any kind of a plane on it, okay? That's all crazy internet fantasy. Now, another thing that came out this week is that, well, Trump was cleared. Oh, that's because this defamation lawsuit is the be-all and end-all of all information about the Epstein case. Because it was unsealed. Previously sealed. These are witnesses, and here's a good one. One of the witnesses says in a deposition that Epstein told her that Bill Clinton liked his girls young. Okay, now that's not evidence. Okay, first of all, it's hearsay evidence. If it is evidence, it would be used as evidence. She's saying she heard Epstein tell her about Clinton, or she heard Epstein's opinion about Clinton. There's another guy named, I think it's William Mearcy, who was a cellmate who was a reporter, by the way, who was a cellmate with Epstein. And he says Epstein told him Bill Clinton liked mature women. I've spoken to many, many women who slept with Bill Clinton. Okay, I've interviewed them here on this show. Sally Miller, the other one, Dolly from down there in Arkansas. Only about half of them had bad things to say about the Clintons. Okay, and only even then, after it became public and the Clintons were trying to shut them up. Okay, these women who had relationships with Clinton at one point all had mostly consensual relationships with Clinton. My information from being around these circles, man, like me and Paula Jones had the same agent, Gina Rodriguez, doing the Stormy Daniels thing. So it's not all, from the radio show. My understanding is that when Bill Clinton had his heart surgery and started taking beta blockers, that was it for him sexually. He was unable to perform after that. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't things you can do to molest young girls. Because Epstein and even, who's that other guy, Bill O'Reilly, they're both known to be using dildos, okay, or vibrating penises in the case of Bill O'Reilly, and they have the same technique. These guys with this thing with these dildos, sex toys, we'll call them. I apologize. So no, yeah, Bill Clinton could have done other things, but as far as being able to sexually perform, I understand. My understanding is that ended with his heart surgery. Now, he had two heart surgeries. One was in 2004, one was 2010. So I don't know which one they're talking about, but I was explained to me explicitly by someone who would know that his sexual behaviors and abilities ended with that heart surgery and the initiation of the beta blockers, which, if you look it up, that does cause impotence. Now, the whole theory, this whole portrayal of Bill Clinton as this highly sex-charged person comes from people like George Conway, Ann Coulter, Brett Kavanaugh, and this group of dirty tricksters, political dirty tricksters that spent their full-time occupation was trying to destroy the Clintons. And they're the ones that came up with all these rapes and these sexual batteries and the affairs and all this kind of stuff. And I think Clinton kind of ran with it because it's ego boosting for him. But really, there's no indications of this. And even when you hear other stories, even from Lewinsky, that he had problems performing, and with completion, that's out there. Yeah, that's not me saying this. But anyway, that's Bill Clinton. So you have a witness saying, okay, that Epstein told her that in a deposition, it's a sworn deposition, so it does give a little more weight, that Epstein preferred young women, and you have another guy who was a cellmate with Epstein saying that Clinton preferred mature women. I've talked to people who said Clinton liked mature women as well. Never been able to confirm this young thing, except for Lewinsky, who was 19, which is the legal age in D.C. Now, that's all. I'm no fan of Bill Clinton. Trust me, I'm no fan of Hillary Clinton. Even Trump came to me and got opposition research about the Clintons from me, okay? So I'm no fan. Please, don't get triggered, man. Think I'm defending the Clintons. Ed gave a full-throated endorsement to Bill Clinton. Oh, God. Oh, God. It's impossible. It's impossible to do this show. But my point is with this, is a statement by some witness is not evidence, it's not fact. If that did go to trial, she would be cross-examined. So that none of this clears Trump. None of this is superseding any previous information we have about Trump or Clinton or anything. It's new additional information, but this is not the final say just because it was sealed and unsealed. This is a defamation lawsuit. Okay? There's nothing here. And they never even went to trial, but they weren't cross-examined. They had nothing. But really, instead of worrying about this island, we should be worrying about what went on at the Royal Palms High School there in Palm Beach, okay, where these young girls, where everyone at that school knew what was going on, okay? Hundreds of little girls at that school knew about the sugar daddy that was paying these girls, and they were getting paid to bring in other girls. This was common knowledge down at that school, and when Epstein's house was raided, he had school transcripts of the school's school records from that school, which he was not provided that by a kid. He was provided that by faculty and teachers who were aware of what was going on. Forget that. If only the school were on an island, people would give a damn. Okay? I think it's a little bit more important to know what was going on at that school than what was going on at that stupid island. Which, by the way, too, many of the women, the sex workers and stuff on that island, the masseuses, were adults. Okay? That's a whole nother story. They weren't all children. Many of them were adults. And I have a list, guys, of 150 names of the women that were involved with Epstein. Okay? 150 names. Many of them went on to good careers. Many of them went on to become nutritionists and life coaches and working for articles and magazines and stuff like that. Interior designers, their names, their addresses, their phone numbers, their pictures. A friend of mine has Jeffrey Epstein's phone records. The guy's got his phone records. It's been on the show. Okay? I just contacted him recently. Hey, what are you going to do with those phone records? Okay, I'd love to get a hold of those phone records. They exist. There's a lot of stuff out there, guys, that exist. Okay, Dan O'Hanks sent me like the stacks and stacks and stacks of information. I no longer have the password to get into it, and I haven't heard back from Dano. But Dan O'Hanks, by the way, is the guy who originally found those flight logs and address book and all that stuff like that. Just came out this week. Breaking news. One of these Twitter superstars has the 24-page letter where Jeffrey Epstein says that he created the Clinton Foundation. That's been on my website since like 2016. I was selling it for $1.99. Okay. On the old Opperman Report Special Archives, you can find it there. Now it's in the Patreon. Okay. By the way, do you know who authored that 24-page letter? Jerry Lefcourt. Do you know who Jerry Lefcourt is? He was Abby Hoffman's attorney. Okay. I got that letter back in 2016. Okay, 24-page letter. I forget when it was Epstein was arrested or he died, Hoffenberg ran around telling everybody, Ed Opperman has that letter. You can buy it for $1.99 from his website. And Business Insider was going to my website, businessinsider.com and downloading the letter for $1.99. That letter came from me. Bastards. Just like that picture of that missile on Epstein's Island. I told you about Water Island, right? Oh, we timed this perfectly. I'm out of notes. My throat is killing me. Carol. Oh, okay. We don't need to get into that. Delusions. I love my notes. My notes are the writings of a madman. Crazy. It looks like a ransom note, my handwriting. I can't even read it myself. Oh, God, I need some rest. I'm so sick. Guys, my point here is, man, I'm not going to give you any kind of hysteria. I'm not going to give you any BS. I'm not going to make stuff up, okay, and lie to you to make things seem juicy and more interesting. I've been doing this now for a long time, man, 10 years. And I've been riding this tightrope, this razor's edge of what I can ethically talk about and what I need to keep private, which is brutal for anybody to be in this position for 10 freaking long years. I'm getting a little bit more freewheeling right now because my days are numbered, okay? It's out there. And I'm pretty much going to be quitting all this. I feel like the past 10 years of my life have been the biggest mistake I've ever made. This move to Florida was insane. The stupidest thing I ever did. From the day I left and drove down here, it's been nothing but a nightmare. But your support, okay? I've been working here 10 years, man. The news this week about Copperfield, Derchowitz, and all this stuff, man. This is all stuff I've been talking about for 5-6 years. The 24 page. This is my stuff, man. I need your support, guys, man. Can you go to the Patreon and sign back up at the Patreon if you drop me a Patreon to keep this information flowing out here, the real stuff, man, the reality. I'm not going to make up stuff about submarines and water islands. That's 8-foot deep water, man. There's no submarines out there. And by the way, you can go on Google Images and look at the satellite image. You can see the rocks in that water. You can see how shallow that water is. There's one spot near the dock, okay, on Epstein Island that's 30 feet deep, and you can see the difference there. But to get to that 30 feet deep water, you got to go past 8-foot deep water. There's no ships docking there. There's no submarines in 8-foot water, okay, unless it's a one-man sub. I looked up some stuff about these little one-man subs. Now maybe they could go, if they're on the surface, they can travel around 8-foot water, but they only fit like two people, one person, two people. Why would you need to do that? If you could just take a boat, put some sunglasses on, take a boat. This is craziness talk. It's just hysteria. And the more you make up and the crazier your story is, the more hits you get. Normal people, no one wants to hear. And then the normal people are talking about this, they don't got no sources. They don't know what they're talking about. All right, I think I've ranted and raved enough. Coming up after this will be Mr. Derber. I think it's Charles Derber. Very nice man. I really enjoyed that interview. You can hear one of my happier days. Professor Charles Derber, who promised me he could. I got to contact him and email him back. He gave me his contact info. Be nice to get Noam Chomsky on the show, right? Wouldn't that be nice? Before I go, my last days. All right, guys, I love you so much. Thank you so much. It's been 10 years. Who told you first about all this stuff? Let's face it. And another thing, too, real quick. Some really nice people the other day on Twitter and social media were saying, Ed Opperman's the best researcher on Epstein. I'm not a researcher on Epstein. Did very little research. Very little Googling on Epstein, man. Most of my information comes firsthand, from people firsthand involved. Hoffenberg. If you don't know who Stephen Hoffenberg was, and there's a lot of people listening to the show today who don't know about my 20 interviews. I did 75 shows on Epstein, okay, in 10 years. It's not like a little bit of work. It's a lot of information out there. And Stephen Hoffenberg was his partner. He was his mentor. He did 10 years, 12 years over this of his association with Epstein. And Rudy Giuliani was the corporate counsel over at Tower Financial, where Epstein worked with Hoffenberg and Darren Endike and Richard Kahn. They all turned against Hoffenberg. They stole $400 million from that company. And we think it wound up in the Southern Trust there in the Virgin Islands. And it was that little bunny trail and that little that got Hoffenberg to sick the Attorney General down there. Oh, God, I forget her name. Denise George, I think it is. Down there. And I know the other one was Carol Thomas, but the Denise George was the original one. Down there in the Virgin Islands to go after Epstein and find all this stuff like that. And by the way, too, man, there was a lot of shenanigans that went on down there, too. Okay. We'll talk about that another day. We'll get into that in the future. Guys, after this, Charles Durbert, good night. Thank you so much. And check out Patreon, Opperman Report, Patreon, $3 a month to get all this stuff ad-free. Help me out so I could buy some watery gruel and some medicine for my throat. Well, let me find some sad music to put on in the end here.
Everyone has gone away. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No one cared enough to stay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You must remember